you find ways to get creative. And I think that's what really separates good entrepreneurs and good business owners is they can think on their feet really quickly and make decisions fast and adapt quickly. Unfortunately, sometimes you got to make some cuts. You got to get lean in some areas. With the tariff specifically stuff, we're negotiating with our factories. We're reorganizing how we invoice. The commercial invoices that come through U.S. Customs, we're changing up how we do that based upon the tariff code versus the services that we pay for.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm super excited to be speaking with Clay Banks, the founder of GloryLite. Hey, Clay. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Nice to meet you and glad to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. For those who know about GloryLite, why don't you start there? What is GloryLite about?
Yeah, I sold a company and another company back in 2022, and I said to myself, I'm not starting another company, not anytime soon.
I've been there.
I'd gotten through kind of a long exit and sold my equity, fortunately, to a venture capital firm. And was kind of dabbling in some real estate, bought some Airbnb properties and was trying to kind of more shift toward that. And this guy from my small group who I'd known for about 10 years, he texted me and was like, hey, I heard you left HavenLock, the company that you started. I've got an idea for a business. And I'm like, dude, I'm not hearing it. I don't want to start anything. He was like, no, let's just go grab coffee. So he pitched me this idea of this kid's nightlight that projects Bible verses on the ceiling, or a single Bible verse on the ceiling. And I immediately thought, I think I have all the resources needed to pull this together very quickly, from manufacturing, inventory, supply chain, website development, putting up the marketing, running the ads. I think we could probably do this in about 60 to 80 days, and let's test it out. So we went in and ultimately I'll show you. It's a kid's nightlight. Here it is. I've got it kind of up here. It's a nightlight that these trays go inside the light and it projects a high definition image on the ceiling of a kid's bedroom. And we have additional disc sets that parents can buy or grandparents can buy that have all kind of different Bible verses and Bible characters. And we have a set that we call it the boy hero set, and it's specifically for boys. And then we have a girl hero set specifically for girls. And so we sell that Shopify store, basically running your typical kind of tech stack, Klaviyo, Attentive, Meta ads. We have an affiliate network of about 2,000 affiliates that help us create kind of top of funnel traffic. And it's your standard direct to consumer business. And we primarily sell Shopify, and we have an Amazon store as well that we fully manage ourselves.
So congrats first off. And second, when these friend of yours pitched you the idea, it looks like you were very confident in your skills to pull this off. So it looks like it wasn't your first venture. You mentioned HavenLocks back before this. So was that your first, before going there, because I know there are many exciting things to talk about it, was it your first venture or did you launch more before?
No, GloryLite was technically my fifth venture. I had started my first one was this company back when I was in college. I published a book, and I want to go back in time. This was in 2002. Back then, Amazon was just a bookstore, and people still bought physical books. There wasn't really audible books, they weren't popular back then. So we published this book, had it collegiate licensed, sold it at every Borders Books, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all the physical brick and mortar bookstores, of course, the bookstore on campus at the university I went to. And I was 20 years old when I started that company. And that was kind of my first real endeavor. I went on to do some other things. Most of these were hard lessons learned, failures along the way that took me to HavenLock. But I had a company, we built mobile websites back when people were on Blackberries. So if you remember if you're old
Thinking
enough
of
to remember the
um,
BlackBerry and the trackable
yeah.
ball, websites were built for screens, for computer screens. So you have to use that trackball to kind of track back and forth. I had a couple of projects or clients that we worked with that kind of dumbed down their site, squeeze it down, so to speak, basically make a squeeze page for that. Just did a tech transfer project out of the University of Memphis that didn't really take off. And so, yeah, I had, and with HavenLock, that was about a decade. So 10 years of building that company. That was a direct to consumer business, Shopify store. We sold on Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's, these hardware stores in America. We also sold to schools and churches. So that was a company that I had kind of really cut my teeth and built the experience and relationship with how to run a DTC brand and how to manage the supply chain. I was the chief operations officer, co-founder of that business. So I kind of managed all the supply chain, the bill of materials, and most of the marketing efforts as well.
What's it about?
So HavenLock was a floor-based locking device that could detect and prevent home break-ins. Instead of a lock that would go on your door, it went at the bottom of the door and it raised up. It would detect through an accelerometer any kind of vibration and report that back to the user's cell phone through Bluetooth. We also reported and had a dashboard on Google Nest and Alexa. So if you had an Alexa, it could also report. You could control it through your Alexa or through your Google Nest as well. So that was the company that, like I said, we had, that one had about 17 SKUs, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. The product was very hard to manufacture. It was custom built. We had about 3 or 4 patents. We have 3 patents in a dozen countries, but that one, custom built technology. It included injection molding, powder coating, firmware, software, embedded development. We had an app that it can control it with. We even had like a sewing machine that had to kind of sew it together. So
Sounds very
pretty
complex.
complex.
Yeah.
Pretty complex manufacturing. Produced it all in America at first, right here in Tennessee. I live in Tennessee, and it was made here in Tennessee for probably the first 4 years. And then we set up a redundant line in China, and that's kind of where I learned how to import from there.
So, we have these podcasts released over 220 episodes, if I'm not mistaken, 5 seasons. We started in 2021. We review brands of all sizes, 7, 8, 9, and above. The things that I see in common from what people tell me here is that this is what the company they feature here on the podcast is not the first company they have built at all. And it has a reason to be, right? Because there are so many lessons learned that maybe, for example, the way you said in the beginning of this episode, like someone pitched you an idea and it's like, I can see like the Matrix and I can see how to pull it off and have something decent in a few days. So what were the biggest lessons for you that you got from these businesses that you built before?
Yeah, for one, when I was first starting out, I would hire subject matter experts in topics that I didn't know enough about. I just kind of knew I needed to get them done. So let's for example take engineering. I mean, this is kind of before AI. We had hired an engineer to start designing out the product, and we would spend time and money ultimately to find out that that engineer didn't have a certain capability or didn't have manufacturing experience. So you'd spend a lot of time kind of thinking you were going in one direction, ultimately to find out that you weren't ready or the point in where you thought you were. So like, for example, we had spent a good 9 months to a year with an engineering group designing our product, testing our product. I thought we were like ready to go to manufacturing, and I built a relationship with the manufacturer separate from that. And I took the design files to the manufacturer, and they politely said, you're about 2 years away from being ready for manufacturing. There's no design for test. There's no design for manufacturing. There's no jigs. There's no fixtures. There's no tooling. There's no radius call outs in the molds, all the complexities. There's no build of materials. And I'm like, I didn't know what I didn't know. So then you have to kind of establish, is this problem still worth solving? So as you learn those things that you don't know you need to know over time, and then your next venture, I think kind of leading to where your question's going, the second or the GloryLite venture, I'd already kind of spent the last decade running a Shopify store, running an Amazon store, running Klaviyo campaigns, all of the funnels and systems that we use in e-commerce today. And then I'd had tons of relationships on the manufacturing side who I had already kind of built trust with and relationships with, who I knew could steer me in the right direction. And I had a broker, because we were literally brokering freight from China to America with HavenLock, went through all kinds of lessons learned about how to transport lithium ion batteries and other things. So I'd had the relationships and I knew who to go to. When I was first starting out, I'm kind of like, I kind of use this example of kind of feeling my way in the dark. Like imagine yourself like in a dark room trying to get out. You know there's a door in the room somewhere, but you really don't know until you find the wall, right? And then you have to kind of start inching down the wall. When you're first starting out, you have to find those indicators that like lead you down like the path out, right? But as you build up these relationships and this experience, you can kind of already see the light at the end of the tunnel to get out of the room much faster, right? So with GloryLite, it was immediate. I mean, within like 60 days, we had a brand, a website, some affiliates. We had inventory on its way to America. We were taking pre-orders and we were running engagement campaigns to start building awareness within like the first 60 days or less. HavenLock, now on the other hand, took like 4.5 years to get to that point, much longer.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, I remember these. I mean, there are a few, some guests that I have recently had on this episode, on these podcasts. Sorry, they had something in common, and I recall specifically one of the latest episodes that I recorded. It was this experienced entrepreneur that worked at, all these big companies, Meta, Amazon, and some others. And when she launched, she learned a lot of processes and mindset and many other things. And when she launched her skincare brand, she pitched Sephora because she wanted to go there because of her reasons, whatever. But she pitched Sephora with a 3D printed version of the product that didn't work at all. They did some photo shoot, all those stuff. So, and she got into Sephora without even having a product. But it's not only about Sephora. She had a business plan and everything that she wanted to do. Like she draw the full, let's say, she saw the forest and not the tree. And then she said, okay, if this is a thing and this is a go and we have green lights here, here, and here, we'll build it and we'll go. If there's demand, she validated that, which is of course not easy, and she pulled it off. And there are some entrepreneurs that have done that too, with the product, without the product. But it's not only about having a great product. It's about knowing how to sell it, right?
Correctly. And sharing that and being able to articulate that vision to the customer or to whatever audience you're projecting that vision onto, and that you're the right person to lead them through that vision. And it sounds like this woman that you're talking about had a really good vision, and she was able to articulate and validate her authenticity toward that vision, and people were aligned with that and saw her as the guide to getting them to that. It was pretty cool. Those people are rare.
Yeah, and there's and I quote, framework she learned at Meta, which is super simple, but sometimes the best things are simple. We don't need to complicate stuff.
Totally.
Sometimes we think we need to do, but it's just to justify ourselves. And in her case is what she was working, she said, at the project at Meta, and she was assigned, let's say, a task, and she didn't know anything about that particular project or task. So she asked her superior, what should I do? And she said, list all the questions you have, all of them, from the most basic to the most complex, list all of them. And then ask yourself or ask around who has the answers, because you won't have all the answers. And she did that. And that's the way she operates now at her business as well. And when I thought about it, it was like, that's super obvious. That's straightforward. That's genius too, because it's how many times do we find roadblocks and we get stuck at things? It's like, we don't have all the answers. Sometimes we want to play that game to find all the answers ourselves, but list all the questions that we have. Who has the answers? Let's find them. Let's get in,
Totally.
into conversations with them.
A lot of times we want to kind of figure it out on our own through brute force. instead of kind of opening up that vulnerability to allow other people to kind of see that we don't have all the answers, right?
Exactly.
And when you go to that level of writing down all of those questions, you have to be in a vulnerable state to go outside of not only your immediate network, but extended network and show that you don't have it all figured out. And you're right on about how we go through figuring out how do we uncover the roadblocks and the solutions to our biggest problems.
So what about Shark Tank? Because I know you in there. It was in 2019, right? With
It aired
HavenLock.
in 2019. Yeah.
And I have interviewed many founders who have been there, and they tell me, amazing stories because I think that one of the requirements is to have a specific pitch in a specific time. And so it's like in your pitch, dialed in and how to sell yourself and your company in like in national TV. And so it puts a lot of pressure, but that pressure allows you to go to a level that otherwise you couldn't have gone. So in your case, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, you're right on. It was a lot of pressure, but I also kind of say it made our team focus on a singular topic for a good 9 months. Now, yes, we were still running the business and we were still building the product and trying to acquire customers, but it was like this side project that the entire company, I think back then we had about 13 full-time employees and or some contractors that were in there very engaged day to day. And I can remember it was the first time where I felt like we were all rowing in the right direction, because the things that the producers FinMax have us do week to week, we didn't have a full, here's what to expect the whole 9 months of here's everything that's going to be delivered. It was more kind of week to week. They would say, okay, submit this next week. We want a handwritten script. And then we want you to video yourself doing the script, and we want you to do a dress rehearsal. So it's kind of each week was different topics and things that we had to do. But each week we would kind of get our assignment. And then we go back to our team and say, okay, we got to, instead of just doing this on our phone and doing the script and halfway doing it on a phone, how can we really blow this out of the water and show them that we're camera ready? So, our team kind of came together and we, hired a videographer and we hired a set crew and we hired lighting and sound and, kind of went through more than just mediocre work. And while it technically was a side project because we still had to run the business, it was at that moment or those 9 months or so, the entire team was behind us and we were all rowing in the same direction, which was pretty cool.
So do you mean that are saying that the Shark Tank production, once you are selected, makes you work for 9 months or before?
So you're not really selected until you're in pitching the shark. So 9 months before, 9 months behind that, they're kind of doing an elimination, and they're trying to eliminate people. They're down selecting. And through that process, they're having you do different tasks, and they're trying to weed out people that they don't want to put on camera or put in front of the sharks. There was never a guarantee that we were going to see the sharks, and there was never a guarantee that they were going to air our episode and until it's actually done. So I can remember going out. We got on the plane, flew to Culver City. It's still at that point we are in Sony Studios, and we had not yet met the sharks. We had started to meet with the producers, and we were going through our pitches and going through the dress rehearsals. And this was we were there from a Monday through a Friday.
Oh, wow.
So we had flown in. Yeah. Monday. We were there 5 full days. And on Monday, we kind of landed. They welcomed us. We, kind of informal meetings, kind of what to expect that day. And then Tuesday, we spent most of that day doing dress rehearsal, pitch practice with some of the producers. And that's when they told us, they're like, still at this point, none of you that are here, there was probably, I'm going to guess 40 companies, maybe 50, give or take. And they were like, there's still no guarantee that you're going to go see the sharks. And we were like, we flew all the way here and we still aren't going to see the sharks. They're like, you're going to get a call from us tomorrow. And you don't have to do this was Wednesday. So on Tuesday, they were saying, hey, tomorrow we're going to give you a call and let you know if you get to go see the sharks. And we had nothing on the agenda for Wednesday. So my business partner and I, we went on a hike. We hung out with some investors that we had in Marina Del Rey. And we, spent most of the day just kind of hanging out, practicing our pitch, kind of going through it, and they never called. They never called. Like
Right.
the day kept going by, and it was like 2:00 and then 4:00. And then we're just like, oh my God, like we're almost kind of getting mad. We're like, oh my gosh, we're not going to get called up. And then about 7:00 that night, I can remember we were like eating dinner, and they call us and they're like, be in the lobby of the hotel at 7 a.m. And we're like, so that's where we got the call to go on. And then they picked us up. And then the next day, that Thursday, that's the day that we pitched the Sharks and flew back Friday. But that whole process took about 9 months. Yeah.
What did you feel when they called and said yes?
It was almost overly expected. But as the day went on, it was like, what did we do wrong? Like we nailed the rehearsals. We nailed everything they asked us to do. And we're just basically sitting by the phone for that day. And then they called us up and like, okay, like, and then we were like, yeah, like it was expected, but that whole waiting period was pretty stressful nonetheless. But yeah.
Do you know how many companies made the cut out of those?
If I had to guess, they probably cut maybe 7 or 8. I can't, out of the 40 or 50 that were there, not all of them came, or at least I didn't see them that Thursday. So yeah.
Wow, what a experience, right?
And it was cool, and then when you film it, that was in September of 2018. Then we kind of come back home and we're like waiting around basically to find out if they're ever going to air it. And then we got a call.
So you record, and even if you record, you don't know if they're going to air it.
Right. And then about a week before it aired, 10 days before it aired, they let us know. They're like, hey, your air date is going to be this day. And I can remember it was in April 2019. So from September to April, we were waiting around to find out if it was going to go on air. So then we knew the air date, and even in like the communication, it was like, it could be pulled at the last minute. Like something could change and we might put something else in its place. But we had a big watch party with all of our investors and friends and family, and pretty cool experience to have everybody together to watch it. It became the most watched, most downloaded episode of all time.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Most shared, most viral, most watched. They did a GOAT episode. They picked 5 of the top episodes of all time. It's called their GOAT episodes. It made the GOAT episode. So he would lose the force, so the energy going in, and he couldn't kick through the deadbolt. So the Sharks are like just in the floor laughing but ultimately he kicks through the door. It burst wide open. He does a flying kick. He didn't give up. He keeps pushing. And then when he breaks through the door, the Sharks just erupt in laughter and clapping, and they're standing on their feet. It was a pitch that completely nosedived, and we're like about to hit earth. And then all of a sudden, like he breaks through the door, we come out of it.
I actually watched it, and I saw that they were laughing, and it was like, poor guy, like he was trying hard.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell when I watched it that it was moving a lot, because of course it's what you see
totally.
In my case on YouTube, but it's like he's really trying and he's not moving, and he's in national TV, and he's like, and the Sharks that ended up going viral, so that's, let's say, positive, but they were laughing. So at the moment, what did you feel? Like, these guys are laughing, your partner was trying to break through the door. So what was going through your head back then?
My mind was like, we had, I call them mile markers or checkpoints. In our pitch, there were certain checkpoints that we wanted to make sure we addressed. And I still, if I'm pitching anything or teaching anybody to pitch things now, we kind of mentally make these mile markers. And I was just trying to get to the next mile marker. I was just like wanting to like move on past where he couldn't get through, and like, let's go to the next mile marker, right, in the pitch. And fortunately, Alex didn't give up, because I think about it, if we would have done that and we would have kind of left that door not broken through, I don't think it would have had the impact that the show had. Fortunately for us, we had, before we'd ever went out to Culver City, we had raised $1.5 million seed round for that company before we ever got on the show. So technically, like the money that we were raising wasn't truly like needed, and that kind of came out behind the scenes. It didn't make the air. Don't take me wrong. We wanted to do a deal with one of the sharks, but it was also about the publicity and about the experience and getting some exposure for our brand, which catapulted us into whole new levels after the show for a lot of different reasons. The company completely spun off and we started selling into schools to prevent active shooters getting into classrooms. I don't think that would have happened without Shark Tank, because when Shark Tank happened and it aired, schools and churches started buying our home product, and we started to see a demand for the school product, and that gave us an avenue and a path to market faster than kind of create one on our own. So yeah.
Well, my experience. So going back to GloryLite, as we already mentioned, you have a lot of experience in DTC, and things have changed a lot, a lot in
Yeah.
the last decade, in the last few years. Everything is changing super fast with the rise of AI and
Mhm.
what's happening with SMS in Texas, right? And
Yeah.
different, the tariffs and everything, right? So how do you approach, let's say, customer acquisition and retention these days in 2025 for your company?
Yeah, but as an entrepreneur, especially, I've been doing this for 25 years. There's always things that you can't predict happen. Like back when, we couldn't predict that iOS 14 was going to completely change the way that we acquire customers on Meta, right? I can remember running evergreen content on Meta long before iOS 14 changed the landscape, and retargeting people for 30 days and putting them into these funnels. And in the early days of running ads, it felt like it was like this untapped gold mine that no one knew about. And now it's so competitive. CPMs are through the roof, and there's more people that know how to run meta ads. So it's gotten a lot more competitive on the acquisition side. But even back then, there's challenges. Like you look at like the supply chain side of things. I can remember when the Suez Canal got blocked and all of the ships kind of got diverted from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And we didn't have containers. We had containers on one side, and we had ships on the other. Part of that was coming out of COVID, and we couldn't get containers to put our product in, right? So now we have demand, but no supply. And how we dealt through that as an entrepreneur. Now we're faced with increased tariffs. With GloryLite, last August, I had a 3.9% tariff. Today, I have a 179% tariff. Right? I got hit with the IEPA tariff, the 501 tariff. All my exclusions got ripped away. And, most people are like, oh, how are you going to keep your business going? Well, like the same way I did when other things happened, right? I couldn't predict those other things. I couldn't have predicted this. You've got to get creative, and you've got to get scrappy. You've got to, unfortunately, sometimes you got to make some cuts. You got to get lean in some areas. With the tariff specifically stuff, we're negotiating with our factories. We're reorganizing how we invoice the commercial invoices that come through U.S. Customs. We're changing up how we do that based upon the tariff code versus the services that we pay for. So you find ways to get creative, and I think that's what really separates good entrepreneurs and good business owners, is they can think on their feet really quickly and make decisions fast and adapt quickly. So we're not sitting around hoping or wishing for something to change. We're like, as soon as we started seeing these tariffs come in, we immediately started negotiations with our factories. We immediately started calling. You talk about this woman who the questions that you don't know answers to. We started calling our network of who are the best supply chain brokers in the world and asking them, what can we do? What are some options that we have to bring this tariff down? Or bring our costs down? What are some ways that we can do? We set up a distribution center in China doing direct fulfillment. Then we lost the de minimis clause. That was something that we'd kind of implemented and built to kind of preempt this. So yeah, there's always going to be I think a problem that you're going to be faced with, whether it's on the supply side or the demand side. And you just kind of have to start to break it apart and go, like you said, go out to your network and who do I know that Mike can answer or help solve or come up with a creative solution. And then you have to act on that really quickly.
Yeah, 100%. We have discussed at length here on the podcast many times what you just said, that the fact that before iOS 14 and even before the pandemic, Meta was a money-making machine,
Mm-hmm.
where you put in, you to go 10 out. And then the pandemic created this hype and this high demand. And then, of course, everything we know, right now, right? The bar is higher, and everyone started talking about, profitability because money wasn't cheap anymore, and many companies weren't paying attention to that. It was all about top line revenue, and of
Growth.
course,
It was all about growth back then.
growth at all costs, and scaling fast, and all of that. And with that, the neglection of retention as well. We all know that acquiring customers is important, but that doesn't mean that we should neglect any area of the business. But when it's not a priority because we're finding other areas, well, we just don't do it. And many brands didn't. And then they found that when they needed to do something about it, well, they weren't, investing in that in the last few years. So they needed all of a sudden to start applying the strategies to be profitable in the first order or as soon as possible, and to start, taking care of their current customer base and encouraging them to spend more from the get-go and lifetime. So it's
Totally.
complicated. And of course, the last thing is that what used to be a moat, it's no longer the case with many things. I come from a background of computer science.
Okay.
My first company was a software factory. You mentioned that you used to build apps and all this stuff. So we did too, not for BlackBerry, but yes, for many other platforms and devices. The thing is that I used to believe that that wasn't going away for a long time. And now I want to become a plumber, right? Because those are not getting replaced, right? I'm just kidding, but it's like, well, we thought it was going to last forever or for a long time. It's like, hey, all of a sudden these, AIs here, you need to being a developer or whatever, a marketer is no longer a mode. And having a great product, having a great community, getting out there and going beyond probably your storefront is the mode. It's getting.
You said the word community. I agree with you 10,000%. Like the brands that are building community and focus on community first will build that moat. They will build that competitive leverage and advantage over any short-term AI fix or any short-sighted competitor that's not focusing on community. And I totally agree with you. I preach that a lot. It's something at GloryLite we're trying to do more of is to build a community with around our product. And we see that in a lot of brands, especially in the health and fitness space, but across a lot of different spaces as well. I mean, I agree with you. Community is what's going to separate the good from the great in this AI era. Totally.
I strongly believe that it's rare that there isn't somebody else selling what you are selling or something similar, right? You come from building a company that probably had patents and a complex product, but still that might not be unique. But let's say it was. It's probably, I don't know, a small percentage of products and companies. So if there's high chances that somebody else or many other companies are building what you're building, what's your differentiator? Why are people going to buy from you?
Brand and community, those two things go hand in hand. We have a situation right now where we have a knockoff competitor from China taking our images of my daughter, images of the things that we have on our website, things that we have on our social media, and they're pushing it in Meta on their content, on their website, on their Amazon store, selling a very similar product as ours. And it's taking 2.5 weeks to deliver. There's no warranty. There's no brand. There's no customer experience. If anything goes wrong with it, you're stuck with it. And I'm watching, I can do some analytics and look in different sources to find out what their sell-through rates are on it, specifically on Amazon. And I'm like, they're selling like 40 to 50 units a month. Not what we do, but still, I'm like, I'm sitting here going, someone out there is getting scammed. Somebody is buying, they're seeing our product, they're serving up competitive search terms specifically on Amazon, and they're seeing our price at 59 and their price at 29. Very similar product. Even the same imagery. We're having to, do all these cease and desist things with Amazon to try to get them to take down our imagery. And they still operate. They still are able to kind of get through it. And it's so frustrating when you pour your heart and soul into a brand and try to build a community and provide a world-class customer support service and a lifetime warranty to find someone undercutting you in offering a worse customer experience for a similar product. I mean, their product, I think, is still inferior to ours, but it's not the differentiator. Our differentiator is our warranty and our community and the other things that we bake into the brand. I think and I'll speak specifically about the American consumer. The American consumer will say they will only buy American made, or they'll only say that they'll use words like, we'll support the small business owner. That's all lip service in most of my experiences. They're really not. Their actions with their wallets speak lower volumes than their words, if I could say that clearly enough. And I've seen it for the past 15 years. We'll have customers ask us through our gorgeous support channel, hey, is this made in America? I only support made in America products. But in their tagline or in their subject line or in their signature line of their email, it says, sent from my Galaxy Note. Okay, where was that Galaxy Note manufactured, right? Where, right? It's not, what is it in America? So
Yeah,
so my lens is now looking at that going, that customer says they have a standard, but they don't have a standard, right? And they're holding me to a standard that they don't hold themselves to, right? And going, kind of getting off of like this kind of this counterfeit production. Other brands face it too. I still believe that the differentiator, going back to the original topic, is community and brand. Like, I have to believe that is still the differentiator, and the brands that focus on that first will survive and will win.
And something to add there in that line, and it's something that I sound like a broken record if, there's, people in the audience who, usually, listen to the episodes, and you'll say, Brian, again, don't please, but it's just something that I own an agency, right? A growth marketing agency. We work with brands, and we see it over and over again every time we audit things. And it's that everyone seems so obsessed about attribution, which to some degree is fine, but I wish they were as obsessed for learning more about their customers. They don't collect, or they don't analyze, or if they do, they don't take action on their customers' data. They don't collect, let's say, post-purchase surveys or any type of survey. They don't go through their reviews. They don't chat with their customers. They don't call their customers. And I have given people, let's say, and talk about it we have a weekly newsletter as well every Wednesday. We talk about this enough. And it's like, it's easy these days with all these tools to process data, but we just need to care. The same way that we said community is important, and it's the same, putting your actions where your mouth is. The same thing he said about the American made products. It's the same as, how many times do you call your customers? How many times do you do? And it's like none. Do you align your marketing with their actual customers' behavior? It's not as hard these days with tools like Lifetimely or any other to see the customer journey, what they buy in the first order and future orders. Take a look at your flows, if it's aligned, if you're offering what they buy, if anything, what they value. Your marketing actually reflects the way they say it, not only what they want, but the way they say, using their words. It's easy. Calling customers, you can get, those who never bought from you but are subscribed, like they are in your community, but they have never bought. Those who bought only once, and those who bought more than once, or let's say they are your VIP. All of those cohorts or groups will give you different insights about your brand, the good, the bad, and the ugly, literally. So it's just as simple as getting in touch with them.
Yeah. It's easy for operators to point fingers at the acquisition cost as the problem. And you got to think about it. It's more than that in the equation. So basically, if you look at the full equation across the full spectrum, you have CAC to LTV ratio, right? What it costs you to acquire a customer, and how long can you keep that customer paying you, right? Over the lifetime of your relationship, right? And I totally get most of the pressure is put on the customer acquisition side and saying what's broken on the customer acquisition side without taking into consideration what can we do to make the customer happier for longer. There's a lot more low-hanging fruit on that end once you have a customer to keep a customer. And it's harder to acquire a new customer than it is to keep an existing customer. And I think you're hitting on exactly the right things is yes, we do have to focus on customer acquisition and reducing CAC, but what if we took the same energy or even more energy and put it toward LTV, right?
Yeah. I mean, many people ask the question like, what can we do to decrease the cost to acquire a customer? Again, which is fine. But then what can we do to, you know, increase the value, the customer lifetime value for each customer
Right.
to be able to afford that higher CAC that is coming anyway? Because yes, we can decrease costs, but there's a limit to how much we can do that without sacrificing goals and all this stuff. At the end of the day, that's the reality for a business, right? How much can you squeeze things here and there? But on the other hand, it's like, okay, these are the new rules. How can we get more money on the back end to support those increasing costs as well? And to add more value, right? I've seen enough brands, even with subscription models that it's like 50% of their revenue come from subscriptions. And it's like, I want new customers only. And it's like, that's amazing. We will get ones. That's great. But what are we doing there? I don't care. It's like, but that's 50% of your revenue. What if they spent one more? What if they bought one more, or they placed, let's say, one more order?
Right. Or they churned out 5 months later or 2 months later than they normally churn. Totally.
Yeah. So I can keep going forever.
We could rap about this all day.
Yeah. I'm very passionate about it. And I think that these are, I come from, I live in Argentina. I was born and raised here. And the word here, I think it's uncertainty. People are resilient because rules change all the time. Import, export, inflation, you name it. Money is not cheap, not at all. And in the US, I've been working with the US market for a long time, since, I don't know, 2006. I know it's super stable, but then you have these years, I don't know, 2008, then you have, the pandemic, it was for everyone, but let's say the elections last year, the tariffs this year. So it's like uncertainty seems to be the name of the game this year, socioeconomic speaking, but also in terms of technical, things like things going on with Meta, with AI. So everything is like supply chain. So everything is getting more complex these days, and people are used to more stable, contexts. So I know it's hard. So I could say that what I want to ask what would you tell fellow founders? Because I know you have a recent community that you created as well, that they should be focused on at a high level, let's say, on the high level this year and the next.
Yeah. You talk about this community. I do have an online community of mostly tech entrepreneurs building some sort of brand, launching a brand or go to market. And we meet every week. And today's conversation was really wrapped around resiliency, weathering storms, right? And someone made a quote. It was like basically smooth waves create weak sailors, right? Or something like that. And I'm doing a horrible job requoting that quote, but when we have to weather storms, it makes us stronger. And as an entrepreneur, you have to know going into it, there's going to be storms, whether that's some kind of macro change, some economic change, some kind of inflation change, market shifts, things inside and outside of your control. And ultimately, we kind of walked out today. It was like, we can control the controllables. What can we control within our center of influence and our resources? What can we control? We can't control the tariff situation, right? But how can we control how we react, right? Yeah, we could get up and storm and throw a bunch of fits and throw our hands up in the air and say business isn't for me and business isn't for everybody and it's all big government and blah blah blah. Like you could make that case, but no, entrepreneurs have to be resilient. What can I control? How can I start negotiating, right? So it's controlling the controllables and understanding there's going to be storms to weather.
That's great advice. Clay, it was a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Brian, thank you for having me today. Enjoyed meeting you. Yeah.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.